Hi guys, my name is Jack, and today we are going to review with you another horrible case. Before starting the story, I want to apologize for my bad English. I am not a native speaker. However, I am trying my best for you guys. Thanks for your understanding. Sharee Miller, who used sex, lies, and internet chat to organize a horrific crime, was arrested in February 2000. This crime is often referred to as the first internet-related murder in the United States. On December 22, 2000, Sharee Miller, a typical American mother of three, was found guilty of second-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree premeditated murder. She insisted on her innocence for nearly 17 years before pleading guilty in 2016. "I have ruined many lives. It's time to put an end to the lies and tell the truth," Sharee Miller pronounces before confessing. Bruce and Sharee were born and lived in Flint, Michigan, a poor town that was once an important cog in the Midwest auto industry. Sharee Paulette Keithley Miller was born October 13, 1971, and according to her, she had a very difficult childhood. The girl grew up without a father. Her mother led a dissolute lifestyle, drank a lot, and often changed men. Sharee's childhood was spent in a trailer, next to her mother's men, who often offended her. According to Sharee's words, she was abused from the age of 3 or 4. At 16, the girl was left alone. At 17, she married, became pregnant, and gave birth. The marriage broke up. Sometime later, Sharee remarried and divorced again. Her second husband, Tribby, was found guilty of second-degree child abuse for hitting his child hard. This resulted in multiple skull fractures. Sharee clearly picked the wrong men. Tribby was also tried for abusing his 6-year-old stepdaughter, but was found not guilty due to lack of evidence. Sharee was flitting from one man to another. She was on the lookout for someone who could take care of her. By the age of 26, Sharee found herself a single mother of 3 children by different men, working in a nursing home and selling Mary Kay cosmetics to make ends meet. She wasn't a beauty with model looks, but she was definitely attractive and charismatic. In 1997, the 26-year-old young woman takes a job as an accountant at B&D Auto Salvage, Bruce Miller's company. At this point, Sharee realizes that the 47-year-old successful business owner is the right man to provide her with stability and comfort. Bruce Leroy Miller was born on July 26, 1951. As a young man, he worked for General Motors for several years, as did many Flint residents. After leaving GM, Bruce continued in the auto scrapping business. In fact, he owned and operated an auto junkyard, which involved taking in old cars, the parts from which were later resold. Bruce was married 3 times, loved racing, socializing with people, always showed generosity and openness. At first, he was not interested in Sharee Keithley, his new employee. Bruce only helped a single mother in a difficult life situation. But Sharee managed to hook Bruce. An office romance ensued. Despite the 20-year age difference, the couple's relationship developed rapidly. Bruce was flattered by the attention of a young woman, and the lovers quickly moved from dating to a life together. 4 months later, on April 23, 1999, a wedding took place in one of the chapels of Las Vegas. Sharee and her children moved in with Bruce, and she found the stability she had long dreamed of. Bruce's brother, Chuck Miller, would later tell the television program Snapped. She always said Bruce was the best thing that ever happened to her. She finally had a normal life and a man who could afford to make her happy. Chuck's wife, Judy, said Bruce was overwhelmed by the pretty young blonde whom he thought was the perfect wife. Only friends expressed misgivings about Sharee's need to spend money shopping beyond her means. She instantly maxed out her credit cards and spent all the cash she could find. "I was trying to fill a constant void," Sharee would later say. Despite her friends' misgivings, her hardworking husband didn't mind and turned a blind eye to his wife's spending habits. In any case, Sharee worked too. She was a Mary Kay cosmetics saleswoman, which allowed her to sell products to customers at home or while traveling across the country. To keep track of her accounts, her husband even bought a computer for her. It was this purchase that became the turning point. Sharee Miller accidentally discovered adult chat rooms on the internet when she was choosing a vacation destination using her home computer. In 1999, social networking didn't exist, and text messaging wasn't a common practice. Instead, People communicated with each other in online chat rooms. Some were adult in nature and were places where you could go and flirt anonymously, share your fantasies, and have a virtual romance. Bruce, according to friends, was aware of his wife's online flirting, but considered such behavior harmless. He loved his wife, was happily married, planned to adopt her children, and preferred to trust, not overshadowing his family life with suspicions. Sharee quickly settled into the virtual world and soon became accustomed to logging into chat rooms and sharing her deepest sexual fantasies with complete strangers under various promising aliases. Detective Kevin Shanlian, who investigated the murder case, told the court that Sharee had at least 25 different aliases. It wasn't until 2016 that Sharee admits, "I didn't get up from behind this computer. Bruce worked at the store and he had his own business, so he was away a lot. I spent hours flirting online. I wanted to control everything, obsessively control people who trusted me. It was like a video game, and every man and every relationship was a new level for me, and every level was harder." Among the men Sharee Miller met online was Jerry Cassidy, known by the pseudonym Reno Dudes. Jerry was born on October 6, 1960, in Kansas City, Missouri. He married, raised his son, loved deer hunting with his brothers, and dreamed of becoming an FBI agent. While working as a homicide detective, Jerry reported a corruption involving falsified records to one of his coworkers. In retaliation, he was demoted, eventually forced to resign after 9 years of service. Although Jerry did the right thing, the move ended his career. Jerry became depressed, began drinking and abusing substances. The marriage fell apart. After a while, he pulled himself together, moved to Reno, Nevada, and became a security guard at Harrah's Casino. Free time he spent in chat rooms, where he met Sharee Miller. Hot correspondence began, and in July 1999 they met in person in Reno, where Sharee came ostensibly to the convention of the company Mary Kay, taking with her friend. The online romance turned into a physical affair, and Jerry Cassidy thought life was beginning to change for the better. Sharee said she was a wealthy businesswoman living with a disabled husband, and therefore looking for a sexual encounter on the side. Jerry believed it. His friend and colleague, Carol Slaughter, would later recount, "Sharee came into Jerry's life when he was at rock bottom. His marriage had broken up. He was in a new neighborhood where he had no friends." Jerry fell hard for Sharee, telling his friend Carol Slaughter that Sharee does absolutely everything in the bedroom. Throughout the summer and fall, Sharee used her cosmetics business as a cover for trips to Reno. When Sharee and Jerry were not together in Reno, they exchanged instant messages and emails of a sexual nature, including videos. Soon they even renamed their accounts, with Sharee calling herself Jerry's Fool and Jerry calling himself Sharee's Fool. It would seem that the ex-cop should have sensed something amiss, but the emails full of declarations of love apparently blinded him. Whether Jerry was simply gullible, flawed, or broken, he was an easy win for Sharee Miller. She wove a web of deception rather quickly and convinced him that he needed to kill her husband. The effect on Jerry was quite obvious to those who knew him. His acquaintances said that after this woman appeared, their friend became like a person with bipolar disorder, overly excited and active before she arrived and painfully depressed after she left. As early as September, Sharee announced that she was pregnant with Cassidy's child. She sent him pictures, a positive pregnancy test, and her belly. A short time later, Sharee revealed that her husband, Bruce Miller, found out about the pregnancy and beat her, causing her to lose the baby. In fact, in 1995, Sharee had undergone a fallopian tube ligation and could no longer have children. Jerry had no way of knowing this and believed his lover's lies. Very soon after losing the baby, Sharee announced that she was pregnant again. This time, however, she was pregnant with twins. Jerry begged his beloved to leave Bruce, take the children, and come to live with him. Sharee explained that she couldn't do it because Bruce had connections in the mafia, and he wouldn't let them leave for nothing. Supposedly, she was afraid for her life and Jerry's life. The young woman continued to drive to Reno. At one point, Jerry was arrested for drunk and disorderly conduct at the casino. There was a pause in online correspondence for the duration of the arrest. When Jerry got out, he decided not to put Sharee in any more danger of being exposed to her husband Bruce and returned to Missouri to try to reconnect with his family. The couple continued their relationship online. Sharee sent photos of ultrasounds and her growing belly. "I just bulged out my belly. Jerry wanted to believe it so badly that I had no doubt. He would see the pregnancy even if it wasn't there," Miller would later say. Soon, on November 5, 1999, Jerry Cassidy received an email, presumably from Bruce Miller, in which he wrote that he knew about everything and would not let the bastards be born. A concerned Jerry tried to contact Sharee. Hours later, she texted him herself, informing him that she had to leave for a few days and that she would text him later. The next day, Jerry received a message from Bruce and learned that he had forced his wife to have an abortion. Attached to the letter were photos of a battered Sharee. "I remember standing in front of the mirror trying to draw bruises on my stomach," Sharee would later recount. Jerry had reached a tipping point. His children, not one but two twins at once, had been killed by Bruce Miller. He was again devastated and full of anger. He blamed Bruce for the deaths of his 3 children and the abuse of the woman he loved. After reconnecting with Sharee the next day, November 8th, Jerry said he couldn't go on like this. He would kill her husband. The couple set about devising a plan to kill him. They worked out routes, parking spots, and even the best place and time to get to the dump. Jerry then made the long drive from his home to Michigan. That same evening, as Bruce planned to leave work, he received a call from Sharee and, following the plan, asked if he could pick up a pizza on his way home. Distracted by the conversation, Bruce did not notice a man approaching him from behind, pointing his 20-gauge shotgun at him and pulling the trigger. After committing the crime, Jerry went home and Sharee began the next part of the plan. She called Bruce's brother, Chuck, said she was very worried about her husband's long absence, and asked Chuck to drive to the junkyard and see if everything was okay. When Chuck got there, he found his brother dead on the floor in a pool of blood. He had been shot in the chest with a shotgun at close range. According to eyewitnesses, when Sharee learned of Bruce's death, she began screaming and crying. The crime scene was quickly discovered, but no trace or evidence of the suspect remained. Detectives learned that Bruce carried large amounts of cash, and they initially thought his death may have been the result of a botched robbery, as the dead man's wallet was missing. John Hutchinson, a friend and employee of Bruce's who had recently borrowed $2,000 from him, came under suspicion. Police questioned Hutchinson, searched his home, and confiscated weapons. John adamantly denied involvement. The search was inconclusive, and despite the fact that Hutchinson failed a polygraph test, he was eventually released. A theory of murder due to falsification of vehicle identification numbers was considered. However, none of the options did not give any leads, and soon the case was closed. Meanwhile, according to Bruce's sister, Judy Miller, Sharee's behavior did not fit most people's idea of a grieving spouse. 2 days after the death of her supposedly beloved husband, she was already dancing in a bar in Otisville, Michigan, and looked happy. 2 weeks later, she had a boyfriend, and it wasn't Jerry Cassidy, but a local delivery boy named Jeff Foster. The goal was accomplished. It was like Sharee had passed a level in a video game, and the former lover was no longer interesting. Jerry thought that after the murder, he would be with the woman he loved. After all, he killed for her, but that didn't happen. She began to distance herself, and a month after the murder, she moved her new boyfriend Jeff Foster into the house she used to share with her husband and completely severed her relationship with Jerry, leaving him devastated. It was probably at this point that Cassidy realized he had murdered an innocent man in cold blood, and guilt overwhelmed him. He turned from a lover to an investigator and realized that all the charges were fabricated by Sharee herself. 3 months later, on February 11th, 2000, Jerry shot himself in his Odessa, Missouri apartment with a .22 caliber rifle. His body was found in a chair with an open Bible in his lap. The Bible was open at Matthew 5 on murder. "Thou shalt not kill, and whosoever shall kill shall be liable to judgment." He judged himself, pleaded guilty, and executed himself, Cassidy's mother will say in an interview. A few days after the body was removed, family members were cleaning the apartment and found a briefcase under the bed with 3 suicide notes and an envelope taped to the outside. Jerry wanted revenge on the woman who had broken his heart. The former detective confessed to killing Bruce Miller because Bruce, he believed at the time of the murder, had abused Sharee and caused the deaths of his 3 children. The letter explained that Sharee Miller had lied to him about Bruce's alleged behavior. "I went over there and killed him. I was such a fool, but now everyone will know the real story of why I got so depressed because I just couldn't tell anyone the truth. She wanted to get the money and get rid of her husband. Well, she got her way, but she would soon learn that she couldn't do that to people. I know now that it was all lies and Sharee's games. She didn't care about hurting anyone." To prove his point, Jerry attached printed transcripts of instant messages with Sharee, in which, in between intimate episodes, she gave him directions on how to find the dump, where to park to avoid being seen, and other important information. Attorneys for the Cassidy family contacted the Genesee County Sheriff's Department and relayed the information. On February 22, 2000, police waited for Sharee Miller as she was getting off a plane with her boyfriend, Jeff Foster. Ironically, they were returning from a trip to Reno. She was charged with second-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Prosecutors believed Sharee was a skillful manipulator who convinced her lover to kill her husband under false pretenses. Despite a briefcase full of evidence, she insisted on her innocence to her deceased husband's family. On December 12, 2000, the state of Michigan's trial against Sharee Miller began, and her case made national headlines. Given the bizarre nature of an internet-related crime, public interest was abnormally high. The prosecution shared thousands of messages between Sharee and Jerry, demonstrating the woman's lies. She was never abused. She was never pregnant with Jerry's children, as she had undergone a fallopian tube ligation many years ago. According to the prosecution's version, Sharee wanted Bruce dead because of his money, as a divorce would not have given her enough money. However, the defense said that the young woman received only a minimal amount of money after her spouse's death. She would have lived a much more affluent life during her lifetime. The defense insisted that Jerry Cassidy was seeking revenge by being in the role of an abandoned lover, so he fabricated evidence. Sharee told the jury that the sexual communication between her and her lover was just part of an online fantasy. She said she lied about her pregnancy to help Jerry deal with depression and about the abuse to convince Jerry to leave her alone. Sharee adamantly denied writing the messages describing the crime, insinuating that Jerry had forged the messages using his experience as a homicide detective. However, police found evidence of the messages on Sharee's computer. Online correspondence played a crucial role in the trial. Miller was found guilty on December 22nd and sentenced to life in prison on the murder charge and 54 to 81 years on the conspiracy charge. In 2007, she was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and found to have other mental illnesses while in prison. Sharee began treatment and filed an appeal. She even managed to get married for the 4th time. Michael DeNoia saw the story on the news and couldn't resist the woman's charm. Michael wrote, Sharee wrote back, and in 2008, he visited the criminal in prison and proposed. Some reports say they actually married in April 2008, although there is no evidence of this union. Miller won an appeal in 2008 and was released from prison in 2009. A federal judge overturned Sharee Miller's conviction, saying Jerry's suicide letter should not be considered as evidence because Cassidy is dead, and the defense cannot cross-examine him. The judge ruled that a new trial was necessary and released Sharee, setting a bail amount. In 2012, Sharee was sent back to jail to continue serving her original sentence after the court reinterpreted the admissibility of the suicide letter. By this time, Sharee had spent 3 years on the outside. She continued to insist on her innocence. In 2016, Sharee Miller, in a 4-page typewritten letter sent to a district judge, suddenly admitted her role in her husband's death. Everyone got a shock. No one expected her to ever voluntarily do so. The letter sent to the judge was seen by many as just another manipulation to gain sympathy or profit. Something happened inside me when I had to go back to prison after 3 years of freedom. You see, I had my daughter and granddaughter living with me. I begged my daughter not to come with me as I was being taken back to this prison. She wouldn't listen. As I walked through the sliding doors and looked back at my daughter, she was crying so hard. I remember hearing her scream, "No, Mommy! No, don't go!" After that moment, The full implications of what I had done to Bruce, his friends, his family, Jerry, his friends and his family hit me with full force. They will never see them again. "Bruce was a great man," Sharee Miller wrote of her husband. "He never hurt me or my children. All he did was love us. He wanted to adopt my children. He just wanted a family. The only man who loved me, and I ordered him killed." In 2022, Sharee gave a public interview to a popular TV station. She admitted that Bruce was not involved with the mob and never abused her. She admitted that she used makeup to fake bruises and faked ultrasound scans to manipulate Jerry. According to Sharee, she didn't do it for the money. She said that she was afraid Bruce would find out who she really was and felt that it would be easier for him to be killed than to learn the truth about her. Sharee admitted that she knew about Jerry's tendency toward depression and the briefcase of evidence, but was confident that she would talk herself out of anything and could manipulate the jury and the court. She was so convinced of this that she turned down a plea bargain that could have gotten her 15 years instead of a life sentence. According to Sharee, it took a public story to find peace with herself. "It's still very hard for me to look in the mirror, realizing what I did. I've been waiting to tell the truth, and hopefully get a sense of peace from it." Sharee Miller remains incarcerated at the Huron Valley Women's Complex in Michigan. She is not eligible for parole. Thanks for watching, guys. That was Jack with you. Subscribe to the channel. There are many shocking stories ahead.